Okay, so these are very scary items. These are things that, let me move the microphone, are items realistically that could potentially end all Social Security benefits or a significant mass termination of benefits in 2024. This is a list of things that I sat back and I thought, well, what's the likelihood of them happening? Please remember with this channel to like, subscribe, leave a review. The way you subscribe is if you just subscribe, you're not going to see my videos. You have to subscribe and hit all, otherwise, they're just not going to pop up. YouTube has changed. New executives, where basically other companies can mass advertise by having their videos by paying, showing up in the suggested video options. And so when you allow corporations to basically take over that spot, they can go ahead and mass advertise, and you would never know that that's not what you wanted to watch. They're just advertising by paying YouTube lots of money, and they show up there right in time for a 2024 presidential election. So you're going to be watching a lot of political crap that you did not sign up to see. So with that said, if you want to see my videos, you got to hit the all button when you subscribe. All right, let's get into this real quick. Number one, these are things that could literally end Social Security benefits or greatly, significantly reduce the amount that you get per month. As you know, 10 years out, there's a trust fund problem for the retirement. 9 years out, there's a trust fund problem for Medicare. What just happened? Whoa, TPAW. That's crazy. TPAW, that's the largest. We've never seen one that big. That's massive. That's incredible. TPAW. Wow. I don't even know. Like, it caught me off guard. The Teapot just donated $250. That's massive. That's Teapot. Thank you. Which, by the way, call me tomorrow because I got your call, by the way. So just awesome. Wow. But do call me tomorrow. So holy cannoli. Wow. Wow. That is massive. God, that is just a massive, massive donation. So that's amazing. Jeez Louise. Um, I don't think they take all 30%, but what Devnil just put. But anyways, wow, that is incredible. That is super massive. So here's the thing: that the number one, and Devnil, thank you for the $5 donation as well. That's just wow. So here's the thing that you have to keep in mind. US reserve currency is this weird financial idea. Countries buy other countries' currency. They like hoard it. They've got like a little pile of American dollars just sitting in their banks. And they do this because sometimes they have to pay off debts. They have to just pay other people. Sometimes they buy so much oil that they got to like pay it off in a different currency than their own. Or they have a debt and the bank that they have the debt with will only accept this type of currency. And the US dollar is pretty much accepted everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. And as a result of that, what you need to keep in mind is this. What you need to understand is that there's a huge problem. One of the larger holders of US debt is China. China has just dumped 114 billion 500 million in US treasuries, and basically they're part of the new BRICS member with Saudi Arabia and doing that situation. So BRICS member China and Saudi Arabia are unloading hundreds of billions of dollars worth of US treasuries. New numbers from the Treasury Department show that China traded its US Treasury holdings from 938 billion in June of 2022 to 835.4 billion in June of 2023, a decrease of about 103.4 billion in just 12 months. So what's scary about this is that our bond market is based off of essentially this whole international currency thing with the reserve currencies that other countries hold, because other countries hold a lot of US currency, the moment they start quickly offloading it, it can cause a problem because the way they offload it, if they offload it too quickly to the wrong groups, it's worse than printing money. It's faster than printing money because the money's already printed, it's already there. It's boom, a significant mass amount. So the problem that I'm seeing here, unfortunately, oh sorry, yeah, yeah, so it was 114, yeah, that was billion, 114 billion, is that the US is now losing its placeholder in the overall world economy. Now, as you know, our bonds are based off of the strength of the US dollar. And what happens is when that number starts to mass flood by being, where other countries dump their their US cash, their US dollars, all of a sudden our US dollars are not worth as much because other countries don't want to hold as much of it. It's like a bank that's holding the local, town's money. The more of the money they hold, the better off that bank's going to do, the more it can lend, all that stuff. So the issue now, which is very, very scary, is how will this directly affect our bond market, that which our Social Security, retirement, Medicare, disability benefits partake in? Because remember, they all go into special bonds. And when they say retirement benefits are going to run out, they're not really going to run out. But in 10 years, that trust fund that we have is going to run out, which means you're only going to get about 20 to 23% less benefits than you normally get at the 100% rate. So you'd get like, 78, 79, 80% of the check of retirement or disability benefits for that month. Now, disability benefits are pretty safe right now for like longevity forecasts, but the retirement benefits, major problem. So this just came across, this was actually forwarded to me by a security expert. This is from the Daily HODL. Let me give you a little more detail here. Even though China has been dumping U.S. treasuries over the past year, because they've been trying to basically, get rid of the U.S. and the connection to it, the country is still one of the largest creditors of the United States, second to Japan's holdings of $1.15 trillion. And we actually owe Japan more money than China. So when people say, oh, we owe China all this money, we do, but we actually slightly owe Japan more money than China. As for new BRICS members, Saudi Arabia, the Middle Eastern country, reduced its holdings of U.S. debt by 11.1 billion over the same period, from 119.2 billion to 108.1 billion. The decline in U.S. bond holdings of the two BRICS nations are a fresh sign of opposition to the U.S. dollar's strength in the overall economy. And Bloomberg's chief emerging markets economist Zayed Daoud says Saudi Arabia's move to riskier assets could influence the Federal Reserve's take on interest rates, which, remember, they just downgraded us from being like an absolute surefire, our bonds are perfect, to not that perfect. There's a problem. Domestically, higher risk means potential losses for the kingdom. Globally, the reallocation of Saudi wealth could result in higher U.S. interest rates, which they're already so high. People can't afford to buy houses right now. Selling a house right now is like so hard. It's a bad idea because the interest rates are too high on the money. While China and Saudi Arabia have been selling U.S. treasuries, other BRICS nations increased their holdings, which is good. India accumulated $26.6 billion worth of U.S. debt securities between June 2022 and June 2023. The United Arab Emirates, Brazil added 255.1 billion and 1.3 billion, respectively, to their U.S. Treasury holdings during the 12-month period. So, to put it another way, what's happening is they're starting to draw lines on the map of which country is leaning towards a potential conflict as to whose money they're going to heavily stock. Or put in American terms, how much toilet paper from that country they're going to like hoard so that they feel protected if there's a problem, whether it's a war or something else. Because think about it, the way it works is at the end of the day, these countries buy the currency that they think is going to be safest that they can pay off the most of their debts with. Because not all debts can be paid off with every type of currency. Some debts require this type of currency. Some debts require the Swiss currency or the Brazilian currency or the German currency or the Russian currency or the China currency. They require a particular type of currency to be paid off. You have some oil giants. The ship is coming over. Well, we only accept this currency, right? Then they've got to pay for it with that. So what these countries are saying is they're starting to choose which side. Is this going to be a, Russia, China side, or is this going to be more of a U.S., United Kingdom side, things like that. So that's one of the things that I'm a little bit worried about, which is what's going to happen to this U.S. currency market, because as the players exist, Russia obviously had U.S. currency. They got rid of a lot of it. They were cut off from the banking system. So they're no friend, obviously, with Ukraine. And then the other thing is China. China wants to have its own thing. It does not want to be reliant on the US. It does not want to be reliant on the US buying the products that China produces. So it's trying to find a way to create its established dominance. Next thing on this list that I want to talk about is a war with mass bodily harm weapons, creating a 50% increase in civilian and VA disabled. So, as you know, if you study war, you will find that the destructive capacity of war machines or products, it just skyrockets, right? We went from like, okay, well, this bullet might, seriously injure this person if it hits them here, or it might be terminal if it hits them here. But if it hits them there, it's not going to be seriously, it's not going to be terminal. And then we, increase the efficiency of the bullet. We increase the efficiency of the weapon. And all of a sudden, now it's almost every single time a terminal hit. Okay. Then you get to bigger weaponry. Then you're getting to explosions, right? Everybody's seen Oppenheimer pretty much at this point. You understand the idea of, the nuclear, the atomic bomb, and then the idea of the hydrogen bomb, right? Megatons of destruction. But then you start to get into other types of weaponry where you can just basically microwave the surface of the earth in a particular area. You could take an entire state's worth of area and just basically cook it. And if you cooked it enough, you would have mass deaths, or you would have significant amount of individuals being disabled. And it doesn't just have to be the idea of heat that does this. It could also be waves that basically go ahead and affect the cognitive functioning of an individual. And so one of the big things that people don't realize is that there are super weapons that can go ahead and limit a person's brain functioning. And they've had this issue where, people will be going to U.S. embassies and all of a sudden they'll have all these really bad headaches and really bad problems because they had, a potential, and they've recognized this as being a real issue where they've been targeted. And it changes the functional capacity of that individual. Right. And Edward brings up Maui. Maui's a great example of people starting to constantly record and constantly, go after the government because all of a sudden the powers that be creates a situation where people can't be protected, people can't be safe. And let's be honest, a lot of Americans, they are not really good at preparing for one of these things. Americans live in this weird fake bubble. The VA people get it. The VA people are on top of that, but everybody else is not doing that great with it. So Americans, a lot of them, they think that America has like the ability to stop any missile, any bullet, anything that could potentially come and harm them. That's just the way we think about it, right? We're less focused on like, teaching our children how to defend themselves and more into like teaching our children about, basically your core subjects. And then the new thing is the woke identity, And so from my perspective, what the problem is now becoming is that Americans don't realize they're like, and I hate to make this reference because it's going to sound stupid, but it's very true. It's like the Jedi in the movies where they just have this ego about them. They're like, I can't get harmed. I'm a Jedi. I mean, I can move things. I can whoosh, whoosh, whoosh and send the blaster blast over there. There's this ego about Americans where we don't realize how easy it is for us to get harmed. Let me give you an example. A lot of people think that if a rocket would be shot at the US, that we have the entire coast covered. It's just never going to be able to make it to the motherland. We'll be fine. Nothing's going to happen. But how would you do that? You'd have to have military equipment completely up and down the entire coast, which we don't. We don't. We have bases, but it's not covering the entire coast, right? They have to mobilize gear to where they think the problem's going to be. But we don't have the capacity to stop all that stuff. Sure, we have satellites now. We could try and, use lasers to shoot stuff down. And sure, we have, mag guns where they shoot a projectile using magnets. And, basically magnets will go ahead and turn on so that if something is traveling down a tunnel, you'll have basically, these magnets turn on and then off and then on and on. And it shoves a piece of metal through the magnetic field and creates massive damage. Sure, we have that stuff. Sure. But, and I think this is important. I think this is really interesting. We don't have the absolute ability to defend the American people. So this ego that we have that nothing's ever going to happen is very misplaced. There are so many technologies out there that could potentially cause essentially a mass genocide of the American people. And we don't really talk about them. One, a natural causing one. Let me give you this one. So number 3 on this list is a geostorm, which causes catastrophe wherever, a significant group of people could be. So you could have a geostorm where there's just tons of lightning and it just fills the ground with electrical shock, and it affects people to the point where many of them are getting electrocuted or, step down from being electrocuted. And that would cause massive, massive brain trauma, cerebral issues, neurological issues, heart issues, etc. You name it, they would have massive problems. But more realistic than a geostorm would be our good old friend here, basically solar storms in the sense of some sort of flare coming off of the sun. Let me give you a quick article real quick. In February 2022, SpaceX witnessed the destructive power of the sun. Okay, our buddy, the sun, keeps us warm like a blanket at night. Here you go. When a geomagnetic storm destroyed up to 40 Starlink satellites worth over 50 million shortly after they were deployed. Starlink satellites are particularly vulnerable to geomagnetic storms because they are released into very low altitude orbits between 60 and 120 miles right off the surface. And they rely on onboard engines to overcome the force of drag, raising themselves to a final altitude of about 350 miles above the surface. During a geomagnetic storm, Earth's atmosphere absorbs energy from the storms, heats up, and expands upwards, leading to a significantly denser thermosphere that extends from about 50 miles to approximately 600 miles above the Earth's surface. A denser thermosphere means more drag, which can be an issue for satellites. This is what happened in February when the batch of recently released Starlink satellites failed to overcome the increased drag caused by the geomagnetic storm, and they began to fall back to Earth, eventually burning up in the atmosphere. Now, these geostorms, okay, what happens with them? Well, as you know, things get hot. They also affect the atmosphere. They also send out unfortunate X-rays. Solar flares, and this is straight from NASA's The Impact of Flares website. Solar flares produce high energy particles and radiation that are dangerous to living organisms, right? Because that's how you get radiation. However, on the surface of the Earth, we are well protected from the effects of solar flares by the Earth's magnetic field and atmosphere. The most dangerous emissions from flares are energetic charged particles, primarily high energy protons, and electromagnetic radiation, primarily X-rays. The X-rays from flares are stopped by our atmosphere well above the Earth's surface. They do disturb the Earth's ionosphere, however, which in turn disturbs radio communication, along with energetic ultraviolet radiation. They heat the Earth's outer atmosphere, causing it to expand. This increases the drag on Earth's orbiting satellites, reducing their lifetime in orbit. Also, both intense radio emissions from flares and changes in the atmosphere can degrade satellite communication. For example, the precision of global positioning system measurements can be degraded. So our GPS potentially could be affected by a flare. Or if it's really bad, it can go ahead and destroy satellites that are being released or currently up there because they could just potentially, overheat. Now, The most serious effects on human activity occurred during major geomagnetic storms. It is now understood that the major geomagnetic storms are induced by coronal mass ejections, okay, CMEs, which are frequently associated with flares. That's where you see like an image of the sun where you see like a swoosh, a wish, a swooshy wish that flops and just poofs out of the sun. That was a terrible explanation, but I hope you enjoyed it. Like flares, CMEs are more frequent during the active phase of the sun's approximately 11-year cycle. The exact relationship between flares and CMEs is still not well understood, as flares seem to trigger CMEs, but sometimes CMEs are observed without any flares. The coronal mass ejections are more likely to have a significant effect on our activity than flares because they carry more material into a larger volume of interplanetary space, increasing the likelihood that they will interact with the Earth. While a flare alone produces high energy particles near the sun, some of which escape into interplanetary space, a CME drives a shock wave which can continuously produce energetic particles as it propagates through interplanetary space. Okay. Now, a CME typically takes 3 to 5 days to reach the Earth after it leaves the sun. Okay. So, bottom line is, these are usually associated with flares, but the problem is we've had moments where we lucked out. And where we luck out is basically where a solar flare will occur, but the Earth will not be lined up with, the projection of the solar flare's energy. So, like, instead of the sun being linked up and here's the Earth, here's the sun, there's a solar flare, right? And then all of a sudden, what happens is instead of, for example, the solar flare, going ahead and going directly towards the Earth, the sun will rotate and the solar flare will go that way. Because, it's a big difference. There's a big, a slight rotation, a slight degree, and we're out of the danger zone. The Earth multiple times could have been cooked, or at least the side of it, to the point where we would have total complete loss of human life in very large areas. So the ironic thing is that they're getting better at figuring out when these solar flares are. The other thing that's very interesting is that they're starting to say, well, the atmosphere doesn't catch everything. And as a result of that, they're starting to realize that, hey, look, there are certain days that you shouldn't be outside. You want to have more and more physical barriers between you that these little tiny particles can't actually go through. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but it is what it is. I love Foxy Dogs that you paused said. Nice knowing you, Walter. The point is, this is a reality and people don't talk about it. And it's kind of weird because the thing that keeps us alive, the sun, because of its heat, growing plants, life is wonderful. It's also so massively destructive, right? We don't really know anything in our solar system as destructive other than maybe like a black hole. But in proximity to us, that would be the sun. The sun is the most destructive thing within our potential reach as human beings. And the problem that I'm foreseeing is that, NASA is not able to really tell exactly when these are going to occur. They're getting better at it. But in the future, 10 years down the line, whatever, they'll probably have a warning system where if there's a potential threat, if there's a potential problem, they might have ways of people going into like a cryo tube, some sort of protective barrier system, etc. Because remember, it's not just always heat. Like heat's easy for us to imagine. It's like, oh, that's steamy. It's like Florida right now, right? There's the radiation problem too. A lot of people don't realize, but the air we breathe changes our cellular makeup. As we age, our cells lose our DNA strands, the tails, they get shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. We reproduce cells and they're not the same as they're supposed to be. And that's just how we age. But if they're radical enough cells, then they become cancer, and they reproduce and reproduce and create more and more cancer. The point is, radiation is one of the main things that causes evolution and also cancer. Because remember, all evolution is cancer. It's the same thing. It's just evolution is successful cancer. In the sense of successful for something living, successful cancer on the other end is that it kills the host. So the point is, right, Charlton Zimmerman says, go back to my kindergarten school days, duck and cover under the desk. Yeah, if your desk was lined with lead, sure, then that would be a good approach. But that's something I just want you to consider, that we are always potentially 3 to 5 days or less away from a potential solar flare problem. And it's just something that could cause a massive, massive amount of those who are disabled. And if there's that many people on disability benefits, that many people applying, it wrecks the system. It just, the system can't handle that much onboarding onto it. Okay. So that's the thing I just want you to know about geostorms. Now, number 4 is about fungal. It is about bacteria. You know, it's about basically a viral catastrophe that is much more severe than COVID. So you guys have probably seen that there is no real fix to a lot of potential fungal evolution problems that we face. You've probably seen the show that was created on it. Really great show. But at the end of the day, the thing is this: as things heat up, different types of microorganisms tend to surface. And we have been heating up. And just like those amazing scientists who go and dig up the ocean's floor and they keep digging and they're searching for things and then they bring something up, which is new, something is likely to occur. Now, we have science, albeit our attempts to use science to fix COVID have not been great. They have not been massively successful. I can tell you this. We have science and we have our entire genetic code mapped out. We can use CRISPR, amazing program, to drag and drop, basically DNA particles, which is just friggin' mind blowing. However, even if we have the ability to create new genetic beings, what happens to all of those who get sick? And sick doesn't just come in the form of death. Sick comes in like many levels of, hey, long COVID, except it could be way worse than that. So we're now starting to see the effects of this whole long COVID idea. And we're starting to see the effects of these unfortunate heart conditions that are resulting from people who basically, took the medication, the shot, the jab, or whatever you want to call it, that resulted with them not being as healthy as they would normally be without it. Now, my take on this is that I think something far worse than COVID is going to pop up. And when it does, I think we're moving in the right direction. That COVID is like a thing that prepared us. It began moving things in the right direction. But I don't think COVID is the super, super bug that we all make it out to be. Because if it was truly the super, super, super bug, it wouldn't just be affecting significant amounts of people that are over essentially 85, over 75 years old. It would be affecting much, much, smaller groups of people or much larger groups of people that are also younger. So my point is, we're due for a real, real super bug. And you will say, yes, COVID, millions died, etc. And I agree with you. I hear you. But I think in the modern day, an even more scary version of the bubonic plague, I think in the modern day, a more scary version of some, Red Death or whatever, is something that is real. Because when it heats up, things tend to change in a much faster pace. Because think about it, if you go back to, basically these frozen tundras, things evolve very, very slowly in those areas. But if you go to the very hot areas, things evolve very, very quickly. And we tend to think of evolution in like the sense of like humans and like, wow, nice third arm. But in the reality, really, really small particles, they're much more important to evolution than, of course, the big thing that results from it. Okay. So that's just something to think about. I don't want to go too far into it because I know how YouTube gets when it comes to some of those talks. So next one, number 5, a wide scale backup server erasing of the IRS or the SSA and other agencies' list of recipients. If you don't think it can happen, let me just kind of walk you through a couple things real quick. Here's an article specifically from Forbes.com. You guys know them. This was written back in 2019, August 1st, by Suzanne Keller. Here's the title. Everyone's social security number has been compromised. Here's how to protect yourself. So let's just go through this real quick. Quick basics. Okay. Every day it seems another data security disaster puts our personal information at risk. If it's not a major hotel or restaurant chain getting hacked, it's a financial institution. Following breaches of Capital One, Equifax, and a slew of other financial and healthcare organizations, there's little doubt that your social security number has been compromised, say cybersecurity experts. Not just yours, Mine too, as well as those as our spouses, neighbors, friends, and colleagues. So, and here's a direct quote: your social security is somewhere, your social security number is somewhere out there on the dark web, says Charles Henderson, who heads up X-Force Red, a team of hackers at IBM Security that companies hired to break into their computer systems to expose vulnerabilities. Next quote: it's totally reasonable to assume that your social security number has been compromised at least once, if not many times, says Mike Chappell, associate teaching professor of information technology, analytics, and operations at the University of Notre Dame's Mendoza College of Business. The point is that I'm getting at with this situation is that these government agencies that are supposed to protect, IRS agency functions, SSA agency functions, U.S. Treasury agency functions, the problem is that none of their systems are perfect. And the biggest enemy of the United States are other mega, countries that have the capacity to hire significant amounts of hackers who can just find vulnerabilities in programs and then slowly erode that vulnerability until they can get in. So the point that I get at with this is that if they already have your information, how valuable is it? Well, the biggest area of money leaving the US government over lots of exchanges would be probably military, or more realistically, the bigger one, Social Security benefits. So, in my opinion, the way that you could easily cripple the United States is by essentially, go ahead, and this is a terrible thing, and hacking the Social Security system so that the payments would be delivered to millions of foreign accounts instead of going to the actual groups that they're intended to go to. One of the big problems that nobody really talks about when it comes to hacking is that the process of moving money, by the time somebody figures out what happened, it could be 12 seconds later. It could be 30 seconds later. It could be 60 minutes later. It could be 2 months later. It could be 1 second later. Sometimes these systems are so advanced and so capable that once they have their in, it doesn't matter if it's half a second later, right? The funds are gone. So to me, because creating money and then, basically depositing it and getting it cleared and getting it into the system, that's tough. But some people are going to figure out and do a widespread theft, how to get access to the Social Security funds, which will create a very large problem. And here's why. The U.S., will have to figure out what happened, re-release checks, go through all that stuff. I guarantee you during that time, there will be significant amounts of people who are fighting with their landlords, trying to get food, trying to get their insurance working again, whatever. And you've essentially taken a group of Social Security Administration people and given them a new massive task to fix, which they don't have enough personnel for. So if I were a betting man, and I'm not really, but if I were in this case, my brain thinks you would need a couple of things to make the greatest heist ever, greater than the great treasures of some, ancient Roman Empire, of some ancient culture, some Aztec, greater than any treasure that's been out there. If you wanted to heist the Social Security, or at least a portion of it, benefits that were available there, you could potentially go ahead and do that very well if there were not a significant amount of Social Security employees available to go ahead and try and counter that. So as you know, the Social Security Administration has 25, 26-year low of employment, mostly DDS reps. And they keep taking other personnel and putting them into DDS rep roles to go ahead and try and stop and slow down the bleeding. My point is this: if you have a government that doesn't have enough people and the government needs more people, and they keep taking these higher level individuals and putting them into these lower level positions, you've created a weakness. And that weakness opens up opportunity. And when it opens up opportunity, you could create essentially the greatest heist that's ever occurred, which is to steal all of that money. And that's a lot of money. The point is, where does it go? What do you do with it? What happens next? Well, the reality is you have to basically get it converted. Once you get that currency into some other place, and it's going to be in millions of bank accounts that then, jump to millions of other bank accounts so that they have a hard time following the digital, path. But once you get it out, you need to instantly convert it into something that is capable of traveling. And I don't even know, other than maybe lots and lots of gold, what is something that is actually worth enough for that amount of money. Because remember, we're off the gold standard. Like, you would need a Fort Knox worth of gold for, just a massive, massive amount of currency conversion. So something to consider there. Okay. Next one on the list. Okay. A food bug. A food bug. Not the bug you catch, but rather a fungal, viral, bacterial, or literally a bug, like a beetle, that goes ahead and causes a mass food problem. All right. So here's an article, www.nifa.usda.gov. Okay, so it's a Gov article. Lori Tyler Guella, Senior Public Affairs Specialist. Between 20 to 40% of global crop production is lost. 20 to 40%, nearly half, is lost to pests annually. Each year, plant diseases cost the global economy around $220 billion, and invasive insects around $70 billion, according to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. Weeds are another significant biotic constraint on global food production. Okay. With support from the USDA's National Institute of Food and Agriculture, land-grant university researchers are addressing high-priority issues related to pests, including insects, nematodes, pathogens, and weeds, and their management using integrated pest management IPM approaches at the state, regional, and national levels. So what they're talking about here is that a significant amount of money is lost every year because of these particular insects, nematodes, pathogens, and weeds. I mean, then you could just add on to that, water problems. People can't get their tractors started because they don't have enough fuel, whatever. But the point is, if there's a superbug, a bug that could potentially fade out crops, you would have a massive problem for Social Security recipients. Because if you really start to look at things, there's only so many crops, right, at the end of the day, that we grow, that we use to make all of these different products. There's like base fundamentals, corn, rice, stuff like that. And so some of you guys know, just so you have a background, that our bananas that we have, the yellow bananas, right, they're almost potentially going to go extinct. And we're going to have to go to these brown bananas that aren't as much full of sugar. And they don't taste as good. But the point is, we keep getting these bugs. But if there's a real super bug, that will cause a massive, massive problem. Because think about it, we'll just have to start growing more crops. Well, wait a minute. How long does it take to grow crops? Well, wait a minute. It takes a season to grow crops. Well, wait a minute. What happens in between now and that next season? How do we get enough emergency food? How do we get enough emergency food to feed people? Who's least likely to be able to afford emergency food if it's for sale? The disabled and the retired. Okay. So I just wanted to make you aware that's another potential problem that could happen in 2024. I'm not drawing any connection between 2024 and what's happening in the United States with election cycles. I'm not drawing any connection to that. Okay, now, next one, number 7. Poor public policy on fuel. Okay, so let's talk about real quick fuel. Poor people are the closest to always becoming disabled. You may think that sounds really weird, but it's the truth. There are a lot of people who become disabled as a result of being in more dangerous situations or having more abuse occur to them. Let me give you an example. People who will often go into the military do it because the other options aren't so great. They need structure, they need money, they need options. The benefits, they're okay if they want to go to higher education or do some sort of path. A lot of people go into tougher jobs. They're just tougher. Blue collar, orange collar. Look, orange collar, you got pole saws, chainsaws, you got weed whackers, you got lots of moving stuff with blades on it. Okay. Blue collars, electricity, welding, big machinery, scary, heavy stuff that's rotating, tractors, farming, etc. Back in the day, we all knew a lot of guys that were missing a finger, and a lot of them would blame a lawnmower for that. That's just how it was, right? We don't see as many young kids missing a finger. That's because there's all these little safety measures and this and that, and they don't know how to fix the thing, even if it broke and they wanted to, blah, blah, blah. They buy the Ryobi, shove a battery into it, it stops working, they buy another one. So the point is, there's a problem here in that poor people are closer to potential danger and harms. My theory here is that the less and less that we have available fuel, whether it's our current model, diesel, gasoline, whatever, or our future model, electricity. So as you know, a bunch of YouTube channels have started to create and present essentially to you how much it costs to fuel their car versus how much it costs to charge their electric car. And electricity now in some cities is obviously more expensive to charge a car than it is to basically fuel it up at the local fuel station. And then you get to the point where a lot of these big cities, they don't have the power grid to go ahead and support the charging of vehicles. So the problem you run into is that, once again, these problems end up on the poor people's shoulders. Poor people are less likely to be able to get food because the price of food goes up because the fuel wasn't available to go ahead and create it, package it, ship it again through other transportation because it always has to go through multiple shipping options, and then basically somehow get back to a table that they're going to eat, on, whether they have to drive it back or they're on their bicycle or whatever. So the problem is that the poor are likely to be in a worse situation in the future. America is not getting better with the poor. It's getting worse. So from my perspective, poor people would be more likely to become disabled as a result of a lack of energy because, and I will quote essentially what happens, with a lot of this stuff. Companies always pass the cost on to the ultimate purchasing party, no matter what. I was speaking with a loan company about getting a loan to basically, put a roof on that house next door that I'm working on. Right, my first rental home, my first smart financial choice, which has just been, God, So the point is this: one of the first companies I called, the guy gets on the phone. He's like, "Cool, looks like we got enough here. We can do a revolving credit." I'm like, "I don't want revolving credit. I've never had a revolving credit other than credit cards. I don't want revolving credit." And so he's like, "Well, we don't usually like to give loans to attorneys." And I was shocked when I heard that. I was like, what is going on here? He's like, yeah, sometimes they can get out of these. And that's why, we like to restrict, what we actually give to them. I was just like, whoa, okay, here. Nice prejudice. But what his little story thereafter gave me was that he talked specifically about, basically how his company has a system that's instant, absolute, done, instant. The moment anything goes up, the price of whatever they provide to their people instantly goes up. So they had a perfect instant system. Anytime they have any increase along their distribution, along their sales, along their whatever, they have instant pivot to up the price so that the consumer that's using their product has to pay more. And I know a lot of you guys don't think about the lag time on companies raising, right, their price, but the lag time, people literally make money betting off of that, which is another video in and of itself. But the point is, and I think this is important for you to understand, when it comes down to, basically the future of this whole situation, the future of this problem, poor people are more likely to become disabled, and we're about to see entire generations of poor people. We had this cool renaissance of the media and people becoming famous on YouTube and more artists and more television and more stuff and etc. But we're not going through that in the future. What we're going through in the future are machines using artificial intelligence to super think and provide services to people. So the idea that President Biden wanted to promote, which is having the family members take care of, basically, these other, these other, these family members that are older. The idea was that family members would take care of elderly family members. That would be wonderful. Yay. And the government could pay them to take care of their elderly parents. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. What's going to happen in the near future is that we're going to literally have robots with artificial intelligence doing the functions that are needed. That's it. You're going to have some robot charges at the wall, charges at the Tesla station, comes out of the garage, comes out of the kitchen, and does stuff. And that's it. That's what's going to happen. Who is going to lose out on all of these simple, repetitive function jobs? The poor. Those without a higher education, they are the ones who are going to lose out. I guarantee it. The moment they come out with a kitchen robot, the construction worker robot is around the corner. I guarantee it. Okay. Next thing. And I guess one final point with that, remember too, when somebody becomes poor, the likelihood of anxiety, depression, panic attacks, bipolar, mood disorders, mood swings goes way up. Because if you have to sit there and constantly worry about where you're going to sleep for the night, what you're going to eat for the rest of the week, all that stuff, that creates disabled people. And I hate to put it this way, but over the past 2 and whatever years, I have seen a massive increase in those who have horrible anxiety and horrible depression due to some mismanagement of essentially the economic marketplace. So I would like to see America do better financially, of course, because then the poor are less likely to have all these anxiety, depression, etc. problems. Number 8, the least likely, it is the least likely until it becomes a problem, though, is something big coming from outside of the Earth, right? A comet, something big, like maybe it could be like aliens, a spaceship or whatever, some massive existing force outside of what we normally deal with, right? Could be anything. Americans, like I said before, we live in this unique, nothing's ever going to happen to us in a bad way. And we don't learn how to fight wars in this country. You look at these other videos of kids from Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, Russia, China. These kids know how to pull apart a firearm, put it back together, no problem. They can do it blindfolded. Okay. How good are they with those guns? A hell of a lot better than we are at those ages. How is that a problem? Well, it's a problem. It's a problem because at the end of the day, we don't have a lot of people who are willing and capable of defending themselves. So, talking about the asteroid idea, satellite data, just to give you a heads up, just to understand what this means. Based on 2 methods of construction, of figuring out, when something was likely to hit that's big. Okay. Researchers estimate that an asteroid or comet 1 kilometer wide, which, is really big, or larger hits the planet every 600,000 to 700,000 years. Okay. The new study, however, suggests that in the past million years alone, 4-kilometer sized objects pummeled the continents. And given that 2/3 of the planet is covered by water, that could mean up to a dozen struck Earth in total. A crater researcher of Polish Academy of Sciences says doubts the ring-like features identified by Garvin's team are truly crater rims. If they somehow are, she says, that would be very scary because it would mean we really don't understand what's going on at all and that there are a lot of space rocks that may come and make a mess. Do we have the ability to stop that stuff? Maybe. The problem is we can't see that much of space. A lot of people think we have a perfect vision of all space all around us. We don't. We see a lot of visible space. We don't have we don't have everything covered. And the problem too is that speed to us is us normal people. It's very relative. We're whoa, 80 miles per hour in a car is pretty fast. 150 miles per hour in a car is insane, right? It's whoa, how would you ever go that fast and be safe? But imagine if something is going 1,000,000 miles per hour, right? So let's look up the speed of light, right? Okay, so speed of light. okay, is so let's see. It's 299,792. I'm sorry, 299,792,458 meters per second. So speed of light in, let's say, uh, let's see if we can get like a speed per hour. I don't even know what that number means. So like on a mile per hour option, it's like 6.706 E to the eighth. So I don't know, whatever that is. So the point is, we don't understand speed like, essentially space scientists do. When something travels really, really fast, okay, we don't have the technology to necessarily stop it. There could be something flying in space at such an incredible speed that was flung out of an asteroid belt that we can't shoot it down. It could be so big that even if we shot it down, it wouldn't matter. So the point I'm getting at is it's always an option. Now, you see there's a lot of stuff going on with Congress talking about aliens. Look, obviously, the universe in its unlimited, inestimable cosmos size, right? Because we don't know where it begins, we don't know where it ends. There has to be other planets, there has to be other beings, there has to be other stuff. What's always been a weird idea for me is like, why would aliens need to come here in a metal or some sort of construction-based ship? Like, there's no point for that. If they have quantum technology down, they can just teleport people by quantum entangling the particles that make up that person. So I've never really understood the idea of like going on like a field trip for aliens and then like showing up in the desert and being like, wow, look at all this sand. This is awesome. And then crashing. And yeah, I get that it might have been a storm or whatever. But this idea of aliens traveling to Earth in metal cans or whatever material they're made out of has always been a little bit like, it's always been a little bit folky for me. Because if they're coming to Earth and they're really that advanced, they would not be using metal cans. The crap we use, like when we're like, wow, and it happened earlier tonight. There was a spaceship went up, one of the Elon's. Like, that's, when you think about it, really kind of like a shitty way of getting out there. I mean, it's what we have, but it's a shitty way of getting out there. We take a human being and we put them in a tube, and then we put a top and a bottom on the tube, and then we put a rocket on the bottom of that tube, and we shoot them up. We shoot them up into space. That's really shitty when you think about it. Like, there's no anti-gravity features. There's no like, special shield features. It's just like we shoot them up. In fact, one of the big problems is they are always watching when they do their spacewalks to make sure that like they're not doing too much, because the X-rays and the heat that come at them. I mean, they're the side of their suit where the sun is hitting them. They're burning. They're so hot. And then the side of the suit where there's no sun, they're frozen. They're freezing up there. So the point that I think is really important with this, keeping in mind with this whole thing, is that at the end of the day, there's something that could be bigger that could actually happen. The reason I've told you all of these things, the reason I think that they're important, is that you have to understand things are becoming imbalanced. Financially, things are becoming imbalanced because America is no longer the Goliath that it used to be, where nobody would challenge its existence. China is challenging its existence financially. Russia is going to challenge its existence in a more militaristic, physical fashion. What happens to the disabled and the retired in that situation? The disabled and retired are a very weak class of people. It sounds mean to say that, but it's true. They're a weakened group of people. They're the elderly who can't run through a field holding all the things they need to survive. Same thing with the disabled, right? How do you think somebody who has extreme, anxiety is going to deal when there's a nuclear strike? They're not going to do well. It's going to be very bad. So these weakened groups have the most to potentially lose. And let's say that there's a society choice where they can only fit so many people into this, area that is free of viruses, free of bacterial problems, free of fungal problems, free of these bugs that are eating all the food. Well, how many disabled people do you think they're going to take on? How many retired people do you think they're going to take on in a limited structure entity. When you see the videos from Hollywood, they always promote the idea that like everybody gets along and everything's super cool. And, basically people are, accepting everybody into this community. That's not reality. In reality, they're restricting exactly those they need to make the community work. That's what they're doing. They're not bringing in people who require a certain medication to stay alive. They're not bringing in people who become suicidal or homicidal when they don't have that medication. So the reason I present this to you, this information, is that it's something to consider. If any of you are like, yeah, maybe I should start prepping for a bad day, then this video served its purpose. If any of you are sitting there saying, how do I prep? Great question. Amazing question. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I enjoyed basically collecting the information. I didn't actually use all the articles that I had presented here because it would take another hour to go through all of it all. But the point is, these are real things that could strip us of the ability to pay for disability benefits, pay for retirement benefits, or could potentially cause such havoc on the financial system that it would destroy what the dollar's worth actually is in the ability to use those benefits that we currently have. And look, there's many ways to destroy the Social Security trust funds and what money is paid in. You just, limit people in their ability to work, and then it's not paying into the trust funds, which were offset by those amount of people that were dying from COVID. Another thing that you could do to destroy the trust fund system is you could basically just, massively devalue the dollar, which is what's happening right now when it comes to reserve currency. Some countries are, basically, getting rid of US currency at too fast of a rate. It's not like a big drop of like, boom, it's done. It's all gone, done. That's not how it works. The way it works is large chunks trickled over a period of time. And that's a very scary thing that worries me at night. Final thought. When it comes down to being prepared, and I'm really hoping I can get the security guy to do some more Thursday nights with me. I actually had him over in the studio where we did a massive, massive microphone shootout. And when I say massive microphone shootout, I'm just going to spin the camera real quick. Hold on, guys. Hold on. Real quick. Let me see if I can spin this thing. Hold on. Let me pick this up. Check this out. Massive amount of microphones. Massive amount of microphones. Okay. We were testing to see what his voice would sound the best on to do future videos and productions where we could essentially do more videos and talk about things that are going on. So one of the things you guys know I collect are microphones. That's like my only weird thing. I collect microphones. I've been collecting them, but that's because there was a trauma when I was younger and I got into college. I was in Berklee College of Music and George Massenberg lost his shit and screamed at me in front of everybody because I plugged something in wrong at this session at Berklee College of Music when I was just brand new, not brand new, but like pretty new to that system. Anyways, it was traumatic. Now I own a super high-end microphone like he had back then. And damn things like cheating. But this is the microphone that Celine Dion uses, Janet Jackson uses, Madonna uses. Well, they obviously, some of them are not using them anymore. But the point is, I now have one of those. And let me tell you, that microphone is incredible. Absolutely incredible. So and T-Paw, again, for the massive $250 donation, that is absolutely incredible. Absolutely amazing. I'm really, 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 really excited to kind of catch up with you guys on some of the new things we're going to be doing on next Tuesday, or basically in 2 days. We're going to be live on YouTube for the first time ever at 8 p.m. And we're going to be doing a video similar to what we normally do where I answer questions. I may do it where on Facebook, I just run hearing questions with people. And then on YouTube, I answer questions. But we'll see what happens. We'll see how it kind of works. And then the next video we're going to be doing tonight is a short one where I'm going to be giving you a status update on how that whole $250 per hour thing is going. And some of the things I've found work really well. Some of the things I've found that don't work well at all. So anyways, I will catch you guys at the next video in about 10 minutes. It is 2:14 a.m. So if you have to go to sleep, totally understand it. By the way, if you like this channel, please remember to like, subscribe, leave a review. The way you leave a review, you go to Google, Disability Resolution Law Firm, Disability Resolution Florida, and write a review. If you want to go ahead and actually see my videos in the future, Just subscribing doesn't work anymore because they made it a pay-to-play system. New CEO at YouTube. So if you want to see my videos in the future, you have to subscribe and then click all, because then they'll pop up. Otherwise, you'll just see suggested information, suggested videos from those who are basically paying for them to show up as like ads in your suggested videos. So it's unfortunate. YouTube has changed. I think a lot of political companies are going to be using that in 2024 to get their message to your brain, because if they can just have you keep seeing videos where this politician did this or this politician did that, your brain's going to think that politician is some evil, horrible person. And that's pretty much what it's going to equate to. That's what the game will become. So anyways, I will catch you in the next video, and then we will go from there. See you in about 10 minutes. And Attorney Walter Hnot, Disability Resolution PA, I'll catch you there. Thank you so much, guys, and have a wonderful, wonderful, amazing night. All right. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.